Responses engine 5, engine 3, engine 1, ladder 3, ladder 2, rescue 1. We've got full showing. Division 1, you're on location, box 23, reporting smoke show on 727.
JobTlks podcast members do not represent the cities and towns they work for in their views and opinions. They are views and opinions that belong to us only. We are not here trying to be the experts or tell people how to do their job. Our goal with this show is simply to facilitate knowledge sharing.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Well, welcome back to JobTlks and a completely uncontroversial topic today, episode 15. Barry's going to take us through it. But before we do that, please like our social media pages at JobTlks, JobTlks. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel or our Google Podcast channel or Spotify channel. Any of them. Listen to us. We like you guys, even if you don't like us. We'll force ourselves upon you until you do. That's how it works. Kind of like EMS in the fire service.
Wow. That was good.
That was a good one.
That was off the cuff, too. That was off the cuff.
Wow. So today is a very special day. For a couple of reasons. One, we have our first monetary sponsor. So I would like to send a special thanks to my friend Paul Burke, who owns a large catamaran. So he owns a company called Sail the Lady. He owns a 46-foot catamaran that is harbored in the Virgin Islands that is available for trips, rent. Yeah. So he has sponsored this episode. So if you'd like to, give you a little bit of backstory. I went to medic school with Paul. He's a really good human being. Him and his wife, Jackie, purchased this boat. They're both amazing human beings. Jackie's a nurse practitioner, so they both share a love of travel. So they got this.
Paul's on the job.
Yep. Paul is on the job in Cambridge as well. But they share a love of traveling all over the world, so they were able to purchase this boat, which they can kind of share that love with people that are interested in chartering their boat. It's down in the Virgin Islands. They have a website called Sail the Lady. It's www.sailthelady.com. Go check them out. He gave me this awesome T-shirt, and is a good human being with a good business. So if you love travel and you're interested in traveling in the Virgin Islands on a catamaran, which I don't know who isn't, check them out.
I've seen the photos. Looks
yeah,
like
it's a beautiful boat. I'll post some pictures in there, but like I said, sailthelady.com. If you're interested, reach out.
We'll throw it in the description as well.
Yeah, very much worthwhile. So today, we're going to talk about, as I said, a completely uncontroversial topic, which is EMS and the fire service. Given that this is an uncontroversial topic, prior to this episode, Nicholas and I have taken proactive steps to guarantee my safety, the safety of my loved ones. So Nick, if you could, thank you. I'm just going to grab this. Just going to put this on real quick. Might be a few shots fired during this episode.
Is that to protect you from us or the audience?
Everyone.
Well, I think it's one of those things where, like, when you're a kid and you hide under the covers, the monsters can't get you.
That's right.
All right.
Think the boys from Pittsburgh are coming for you?
Yeah. All right.
What are you?
All right, now we can talk about EMS and the fire service.
Are you in the town or something? What is going on? Look at you.
Whose car are we taking?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
That's right.
You look great there.
You know, this fit a little bit better in 2019 when I was wearing it.
I wasn't going to say anything. All
right, well, now I feel a little bit safer for all the shots that are going to be fired after this episode. Maybe some I will. Who knows? Anyways, so we're going to talk about EMS and the fire service.
This video is so good.
Yeah. So I'm going to share this video. So unfortunately, this is for our video audience. For our audio audience, hopefully you can.
We'll share it on our social media.
We'll share it on our page. But the point being, this can be a controversial topic, but it doesn't have to be. Like everything else on the show, we want to have intelligent conversations about the issues that matter. One of them is EMS and the fire service and the role that it plays. It doesn't have to devolve into just this fanatical bullshit that ends up being a lot of time at the firehouse table sometimes. However, I am wearing body armor, so maybe you shouldn't listen to me. Anyway, so we have a nice video to lighten the mood here, and we hope you enjoy it.
Risita, ¿qué? Ve por la paellera. Venga, que las 2 de la tarde ya están aquí. Mira, el bañador. En las chanclas. Todo despeinado porque no me dio tiempo nada ponerme las chanclas y el bañador. Voy a la playa, había subido la marea. Había subido la marea y encontré una paella. Y la encontré porque estaba la paellera agarrada metida entre las piedras de Chipiona del faro. Y cuando entro en el restaurante me ve el cocinero con una paellera y adentro la vende paellera. ¡Anda, mira dónde llega el agua! Llegaba el agua hasta el restaurante. Había subido la marea. Jesús, hay que hacer ahora con los 2 sacos de arroz. ¡Ay, llama para Sevilla! ¡Llama a Sevilla que traigo paella! Jesús, y yo con el bañador y con la paella. El cocinero. No vea, para Sevilla. Y el último que cuando ya salió la bien de regla, estamos llorando los dos. Me cobró el tío la paella. Me cobró a 500 metros la paella. Y ya no fui más. Me fui andando a con los amarillos hasta hoy. Me mandó por la noche, había bajado más el agua y por la mañana había subido. Cualquiera estaba bonita la paellera, ¿sabes? A lo mejor está en el barco ese del petróleo.
En el Prestige.
En el Prestige ese. Y ya no trabajé más la cocina. Ya aborrecí la cocina. Ay, ay, ay. No cobré nada, me dieron el dinero del bote.
Oh man! So we obviously wanted to lighten the mood a little bit, other than protect my personal safety, because it can be a very divisive topic, but I thoroughly believe it doesn't need to be. I think it's just a conversation that needs to be had. A couple episodes ago, we talked about all hazards agencies, the shift in culture in the fire service to where we're no longer just fighting fires, right? We're that all hazards agency that's kind of responding to the unique needs of our community. And in some services, depending on how large or small your agency is, a part of that is EMS, right? So like I said, as we've discussed in recent episodes, the fire service has changed drastically over the years, and many of us have transitioned to providing EMS. So for communities large and small, one of the big things is EMS represents a small and vital portion of their daily call volume, right? So it doesn't necessarily, sometimes it doesn't represent the majority, but it can still represent a sizable portion of call volume, right? And recognizing that EMS, for better or worse, it does play an important role in the fire service. Recognizing that, and just how do we kind of shift the conversation from like this adversarial kind of like generational, like, paramedics ruin the fire service, or, these guys like don't understand like how much of the call volume is like they're not getting with the times. Like, how do we kind of dissect that conversation into a more like positive and like workable conversation about like, hey, like there's some positivity to be had here. So,
do you have any suggestions?
He's mostly just looking at us like, guys, what do you think?
I really thought this was going to be more, this is going to turn out to be a little bit more conversation. Yeah. No, listen, I think that it's tough because a lot of the places that provide EMS, some provide it as like non-transport. We're an example of that. Some provide it as they run their own ambulances and transport. Some provide it like FDNY provides it as a total third service. You know, it's under the fire department, but it's its own entity. And there's some role in just about every fire department that's EMS, whether it's first responder, whether it's EMT, whether it's medic, whether it's transporting, what have you. And I agree I don't know why there's such a culture clash, especially with like oncoming new EMTs probably 20 years ago and then now new medics. But I think it's important for the people that don't understand like why sometimes guys are not upset to do EMS, but like don't want to just be labeled that, is that a lot of people become medics now because that's how you get in the fire service. And so like you get guys like, I like to think of it as like you have guys that are so passionate about getting on this job that they're willing to put themselves through that program to give themselves a better shot. Or, you know, it's the same as like some guys go in the military to get veteran status. You know, some guys do their paramedic. And I think it's just important to remember that we all want to be there. We all want to be doing the job, you know, together.
And I think it's one of those things like I understand like in previous generations we've always been providing EMS, right? Whether that's, you know, the conversation has changed, whether you're transporting, non-transporting, intercept, what have you. The fire department for hundreds of years has been providing emergency medical services to some extent or another, right? Whether that's as a first responder before there was even some sort of credentialing, like back in probably this, you know, 1800s when like the infancy of this country, they were providing some sort, you know, there were very limited means, but we were providing like the, I'm struggling for the word, like the rudimentary, I guess, emergency medical services. Yeah. So it's always existed. But like I often find myself like wondering like why is this like such a controversial topic? And like to me, like I understand that like you know, everyone here is a paramedic. I understand that not everyone likes emergency medicine, and that's fine. But I think that you can look at it through the lens of like, you know, like the time and the culture is changing. The way that we fight fires is changing. The way that we provide services to our community is changing. The expectations of our community are changing. And at the end of the day, like we're here for the mission, and the mission is to protect the lives and property of our community. So if that means us stepping up and being paramedics or us stepping up and being EMTs or doing what have you, like that's the mission. And I would rather have someone that's committed enough to this job to be like, to go get a like essentially like a post-secondary education because they want to be here that bad.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I will say that now I didn't go through like, you know, 10 years of working in the private service before I got into my job now, into a firehouse. But the cultures, although similar, are different. And then that's, I think, why they clash. Because I think that I don't know of too many EMS providers, right, that are career paramedics, and that's all they do. They're just paramedics. Now, there are people out there, there's no question about it. But as many people as I know that are like career firefighters, right? These guys who have been on, like all the senior guys have been on for 20, 25, 30 years. When I started working in privates, it was kind of like all young people out there just kind of like, yeah, I got my EMT license, I'm just here to work. Right. And then the paramedics, a lot of them were, you know, a lot of them were firefighters, a lot of them weren't, but it was just different from going to like my base, being a paramedic, and then going to the firehouse. The traditions are different. The way that you run the fire. I'm at work by 7. I don't have to be there till 7:45. If I walk in at 7:45, it's like, hey, thanks for showing up early, you jerk, right?
Right.
If I get there at 7:30, it's like, good job. I'm there at 7 just because I got nothing else to do, and frankly, I just roll out of bed and go, and I like having the time to check my truck out and do everything like that, right? If my shift ends at 8, my relief is there at 7:59 when I'm at a private ambulance base. There's no like courtesy in that respect. Yeah, you got to clean your base and you got to do stuff like that. Nobody really does it. A lot of people don't really care if they lose their job. and I'm not. That's a broad stroke, right?
broad brush.
And I'm not saying. And I worked for like what I consider a pretty great company who was very fair, but the attitude was completely different. Where when you walk into the firehouse, it's like this is your second home, and a lot of guys, you know, not everybody, but a lot of guys take care of it, and they honor the traditions that have been handed down before them. And so I think that is part of the big clash, is that people bring some of their private EMS workspace bullshit to the firehouse, and they introduce that culture into the fire service, and that's what the gist that I've gotten.
I think that's like a fair assessment. I think that highlights two different types of people and paramedics that come into the fire service.
Correct.
There are, and I think a lot of the, if you want to call them issues or culture clashes, whatever you want to say, they come in because, let's just face facts, like private EMS is not really sustainable. Like as a life choice, it's a for-profit company that just abuses people, and it's not company specific, it's across the board. You know, it's low paying, it's whatever the case is. And so there are a number of people that don't want to be firefighters.
Right.
But
they just come as a...
They come because they can get benefits, you know, and if you're fortunate to work in a place like Boston that has a third service where they do have good benefits and pay and stuff like that, and or you like Worcester or you know a number of at Finney and a number of services, it's good because they can stay that. But
you can make a career out of it.
Yeah, some people choose to come because that's where they can make a living and do what they want to do, and they're not necessarily interested in being the firefighters. I think the like obligation of the people that are already on the fire department is to like instill in them like the importance of also being a good firefighter.
Right.
And instead of that like culture clash, like, oh, like fuck you, like you're a medic, it should be like, hey, whether you got your paramedic, which is the other side of the coin, because you wanted to be a firefighter and now you're here and you want to instill that, or if it's like, hey, like this might not have been the job that you necessarily wanted to do for your life, but like let's make it a good one. And I think that the other I think a lot of where I see culture clash too is that a lot of services go up to providing their own EMS, whether it's EMT, paramedic, whatever, and you do get people that want to be like I'm one. Like I want to be a medic, and I said this to you before. I like being a medic. I love being a firefighter, and if it's not implemented correctly, you might not ever get the chance to be a firefighter.
Yeah, right.
And so I think what happens is that you get people that want to do that, and then they get upset because they're like, listen, I know that I am a medic, but I also want to do, it's not I want to do less, I want to do more. Like I want to do all of this. Yeah. And then the flip side of the coin is like, well, listen, you were hired for a medic, like quit your bitching. And that becomes like tension instead of just actually like discussing it. Like, no, like this is why I feel the way I feel. And just because something's there doesn't mean it can't improve. Like it can't be better. So it doesn't always. Now, give me. There are people that just bitch, like, and they bitch to bitch, and they have no solutions, and they're gonna complain no matter what. But sometimes the like complaints, if you will, are valid, and like I think it's worth being heard by both sides. So I think it's worth like people who don't do the EMS aspect listen to the people who do and like why they feel the way they feel. And I think it's important for the people that do the EMS aspect to listen to the people that don't and why they feel, you know, it's important, you know?
No, 100%. I think like, to me, like, it's just like, I don't want to say like a changing of the tide. Like I don't think it has to be mutually exclusive. Like you said, like one of the things that I've always appreciated, that quote that I've used a lot, is like, I like being a paramedic, but I love being a fireman. Like it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. And I think like senior membership, like maybe they didn't have to become paramedics, right? But like that doesn't mean that these younger kids are any different. Like they still have the same aspirations, they still have the same goals, and I think they just have to kind of like we all have to just kind of view it in a different light of like, hey, like how do we find and facilitate that common ground to like, hey, like, you know, like they don't want less, they want more. They want to like, I want that senior man to teach me everything he knows so I can be better.
Right.
So like and I don't want to dive like too much into I'll highlight some system design because there's almost like an infinite amount of configurations as far as picking system design is like very much like it's as specific as the department and the department's geography. Like what works for one department might not work for another. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you guys is like, what are the general pros and cons of like a fire-based EMS system? So when I think of like the pros and cons of a fire-based EMS system, I think of it very much through like an all hazards approach. Do I think that every agency should have a fire-based EMS system? No, because it might not be the best approach for that agency. But I think if you're trying to view it through that like all hazards lens, I do think that agencies that do adopt a fire-based EMS system approach are capitalizing on multiple opportunities. One, they're capitalizing on increased presence in the community, increased community outreach, right? Like you're having firefighters responding to people's homes, like even if it's for those small like social services calls, like that's giving us more presence within the community versus just fire alarm activations, fires, car accidents. There's a lot to be had there, but it's an additional opportunity for us to have a presence within the community and to showcase another service that we provide and showcase our versatility. Two, like I think like at the end of the day, like there is some budgetary aspects that are important, right? Sometimes times are changing, like budgets are, we're being asked to do more with less, even in affluent departments. It is not, sometimes self-sustaining, but it's a way that departments can increase revenue that can go to, and that's where I don't want it to be like a contentious conversation because you guys will be like, oh, like paramedics are in the fire service, but and I don't think like paramedics save the fire service. I think paramedics contribute a great deal to the fire service. Like I don't want to be labeled just as, oh, Barry's a paramedic. I'm just Barry, right? But I think that running an agency well and having some of that monetary contribution come into the department helps achieve other things, right? It helps with getting new apparatus. It helps with staffing, helps with training, right? So if there's anything that we can do to help increase, like you said, not justify ourselves, but be proactive within our community to increase our presence, I think that's a positive thing. But there are cons. So I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on the pros and cons of not just private versus whatever. What do you guys perceive as the cons of or the pros and the cons of a fire-based EMS system?
I think so.
Do you want the vest?
I'm good.
Yeah.
I think one of the pros of a fire-based EMS system, at least the privilege I've had in the two systems I worked for, is that we can have really, really, really good paramedics. If I think to myself, if I go down in a fire, who do I want outside? It's the guys I work with. You know what I mean? And that's a virtue, I think, of the ability we have with being able to advocate for training and different things. And I think some of that comes down to being a not-for-profit service. So I think that, and listen, businesses exist, right?
Yeah.
It's
irrefutable.
You have to make money doing things. So there are services that are going to exist and they have to make money and they have to make profit. But when that's not your driving factor, I think that you have the ability to have protocols that are more patient care driven. I think you have the ability to advocate for more training that you might not be able to convince somebody who's trying to have a bottom line. And we do have a bottom line, budgetary and stuff like that. And I think that you can, if you have the right people and systems in place, make a really, really good patient care experience for people. And I think the drawback of fire-based EMS is the unpredictability of it. So now we're going through paramedic shortages, and that's not just fire-based, I guess, it's everybody. But when you go through these shortages or you can't hire people to replace these guys as they come in, Matt Mahoney is a good person you talk to. He's he comes on, he works the rescue on his job, and then at a certain point when he gains seniority, he gets to move on to other things and be an engine person, be a ladder guy, whatever the case is. And that's I think what people want. And I think the unpredictability of getting those replacements in and then being stuck in that for your whole career is a downside. And it can limit you in your career. in our job, I would say that there's pros and cons. Like it can excel you and it can limit you because, like our rescue, if you want to be on our rescue, like generally you're got to be a medic at this point to get on. And so like being a non-medic, you may have a really hard time getting to the rescue, which is like a goal that a lot of people aspire to. And on the flip side, if you had like the goal of being on a ladder company, until there were enough medics to like replace you at the ground level, you're not going to be able to. And we don't know, you never know who you're going to be able to hire, how many people are going to be medics coming on and stuff like that. So it's just the unpredictability of it. But I think the overall benefit is that we can be 100% patient care driven and not profit driven. And that can lead to, I think, really, really good providers.
I think the best thing about having a fire service driven EMS system, right? I think that the private world is pretty well labeled as like this revolving door policy with these companies. Like you'll see someone get fired, and it's like, all right, yeah, don't come back here for 2 years. That doesn't get said, but it seems like they're back in 2 years, right?
Or they get fired from 5 different
from
EMS companies.
Multiple things, and it's kind of like it's a revolving door. It's like, or they quit because they're sick of the management or whoever, and they go somewhere else, and they go somewhere else, and they go somewhere else. Yeah, you can definitely do laterals in the fire service, but you can only do so many laterals in the fire service before someone's like, yeah, why you're on your 5th lateral? Why would I hire you?
Right.
Yeah. There's obviously either something wrong with that person, or they're just not worth. Or maybe there isn't. Maybe they're great, but maybe they're just not going to be worth the time investment for your city or town. So with that said, you have the same providers for a long time who I think, and you can even take a green guy, and you can take, the good part, when we roll up to a scene, we have 4 to 5 paramedics on it at all time with the engine with 3 guys and the ambulance, with 2. So we have 5 paramedics, right? So it's not just like, a fly car and 2 basics and handling this call, and maybe the fire service shows up, or maybe it doesn't, or maybe they only show up when they need extrication, or there's a big patient or something like that. So we always have more brains attacking whatever the problem is in front of us, right? So that's the huge benefit of fire, of like a fire driven EMS.
Yeah.
But I think that it's, as far as like getting good providers, some of the best providers I know work in the private system. And they're the few people that I do know that have just stayed paramedics because that's all they want to do. And we've talked about in the past about how hard it is to be proficient at 2 jobs, right? So that leads me to like the con.
Yeah,
right?
You only have so much bandwidth.
You only have so much bandwidth. And so like for me to be like a stellar paramedic, next level paramedic, I've got to devote a lot of time to that. But what I really want to do is I really want to get in, my bunker gear, my SCBA, and I want to go train and do stuff, because those are the situations and scenarios that like appeal to me. And so that's kind of the con, is like having to split the difference and try to be really good at both things. And it's not impossible. It's just a lot of work to do so.
Yeah. And I wasn't saying that private EMS doesn't turn out good providers, because I also think they are some of the best providers around, work for the privates. I just think that the ability to advocate for the right training and things like that is much easier in the fire department. I also think it depends on where you work. Yeah. Because if you work in a system where you just see a lot, you're going to build really good medics over time, because they just have experience. It'd be the exact
sheer
same
amount of volume of calls.
It's the same thing when you talk about some of these really big cities that have a crazy amount of structure fires. Like those guys can just do it because they see it all the time, and they can, they're much quicker to like be able to assess the situation, be able to like identify the problems. Like, talking about structure fire, same thing with a patient. The more you see it, the better you're going to be at it. So I think, some of that is also the service and just the like nature of where you work. And, we work with a lot of guys that work full time in the privates on top of, you know, the
Working.
fire service, you know. And I mean, you want to talk about some of the best medics, you know, like
Right.
Shmoo Flevlin or whatever we call him.
Shmoo Flevlin? Glue. His name is Glue.
Glue.
He's one of them. His captain is one of them. The supervisor elsewhere. Our old lieutenant, great
My
medic.
captain?
Yeah, your captain. Like, just some of the best guys, and just because they do it
Yeah.
so much,
Right.
you know. And yeah, I think it's just unfortunate that it's a culture clash, and the sad reality is I don't know the answer to it. I don't know what the answer is to fix it, other than having an open mind to from both sides, to, like, you know, listen to why these people who aren't, like I said before, who aren't medics or EMS providers, why the things upset them, and then they also need to be receptive to why you might think things could be better as well, you know.
I think so. There's a couple of things. I think it doesn't matter as much for like larger communities, medium-sized communities, but I think for some of these like really small towns, like if they did not have fire-based EMS, they would not have a career fire department. Period.
You're right.
Yeah, some of them, that's true. Yeah.
Like, so I think it's one of those things where, like, it really does play a large role in, like, you know, at the end of the day, like budgetary and staffing, and like as far as private EMS goes, like I think private EMS is necessary in the sense that private EMS exists because it wouldn't exist if it wasn't necessary, right? It just like anything else, it's like a market economy, like it plays an important role,
Yeah.
and because we need it to.
Right.
But yeah, like I don't know anyone in the fire department really that has a paramedic that didn't start at a private service. And, you know, like there's some private services that are better than others, some private services that instill better qualities or have better clinical standards of care, better training standards of care. But I think it's important. I think that's where most people start. And I think, like, I don't want to say for all, but I think, like, you're probably, like, I think it, to me, it, like, makes me appreciate the fire service more. You know what I mean? Like, coming from a private background, it makes me appreciate, like, how good we have it on the fire side. However, like, I very much credit, like, my time in the private sector is, like, a very formative time in my EMS career. I got to do some pretty cool things, and I think it made me a good provider. And that can be, you know, that can be anywhere. But, like, you know, I think if I was maybe in a different part of the country where, you know, like, a lot of times, like, people enter the fire service because, you know, for the most part, you know, a career in the private sector, like you said, just isn't sustainable as far as, like, quality of life. And there's some agencies that are pushing back against that narrative, which I think is very cool. But, you know, third services, like if you look at, you know, Boston or WEMS or down south or like LA County, you know, like some of these like big systems where like you can be a career, Seattle, like Seattle Medic One, like you can be like pretty much like on a rescue, and like you can truly be a master of that craft. But I do think, like you said, John, like some of the perils of it is that like you only have so much bandwidth, and like you have to choose what you want to be good at. So sometimes you have to make some choices. You can be a mediocre paramedic, you can be a fantastic paramedic, and some guys like or gals like maybe don't want to make that external commitment to like. I think like I quantify myself as like a decent provider. Like I still have a lot to learn every day, but like I try to do stuff on the outside that makes me better, and I still feel like I always have like way more to learn. Yeah. So, and that's a lot. That's a heavy burden, I guess.
Well, it is, and it's again, if we talk a little bit about like Dr. Peter Handheavy, right? And he talks about how you're able to like cope with calls, and you have to get to the like what's the word I'm looking for here? Like the conclusion of it. You have to, if you leave a call and you know that you didn't do everything that you could because you didn't know what to do in a sense, or you just didn't have it together enough to get things done in a way that provided the outcome that you're looking for, right? It's hard for people to cope with that. If you leave a scene knowing that you did everything possible, right? Everything possible. There was nothing more that you could have done. Well, then now, you know, now you can cope with it. You know what I mean? Because the conclusion was the conclusion. Ultimately, there was nothing that you could do more. And so you can live with it.
Yeah.
But when it's on the other end, that's like you just mentioned, and what brought me here was you said that's a lot of weight to be like, man, I don't know if and when the time comes if I'm gonna know what to do, right? So when I was talking to Gary Reagan, he said I have performance anxiety. He's like, so what do I do? He's like, I just train all the time and bring myself through these scenarios. He's like, because when that moment comes, I can't miss because because it's devastating.
Yeah.
And that's the weight that EMS can bring to the firehouse. And that's something that guys in the past didn't have to deal with as heavy because it wasn't on them, let's say, to make those decisions, so.
And that's what I said. Like, I like the notion that someone, like, some people will use paramedicine to get to the fire service or use EMS to get to the fire service, and maybe that's not their true passion. I think, like, anything, if it's in your just job description, like, if you're the right type of mentality, you should strive to be proficient at it. Some people don't really care, and that's, like, their personality. But I like the notion, and I'd like to think that, like, guys that have been on this job for a long time can respect the fact that, like, this individual, like, cares enough to go to school for 9 months to 2 years just because he fucking wants to be here that bad.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So, like, versus a guy that, like, hey, you want to take civil service? I'll be like, yeah, no, sure, I'll take it, right? Versus this kid that, like, hey, do you want this job? You want it bad enough? You want to maximize your chances to be here? Go fucking be a paramedic. Go work in private EMS for some time. Get your dick kicked in for a little while, and, like, you'll probably maximize your chances of getting on a job. And, like, if someone is willing to jump through that many hoops just to, like, be here, then it's my responsibility to mold them into what I want them to be. Eventually, I'm far from being a senior man, but that's my thoughts.
I also think, like you saying, like, it's a burden on you to constantly learn. It's a burden on anyone to constantly learn their craft. Like we always say, be a student of your craft, and we talk about the fire service when we say that, but same thing as being a medic. Like you got to be a student of your craft forever. You should never go in thinking that you know everything because
you don't.
Again,
You're far from
the more you see, the better you're going to be, and like the more you're going to have experience. But there's always going to be a curveball.
Dude, and like I mean, I'm fortunate enough, like on the side, I've had some like good opportunities, and like I really enjoy teaching as a paramedic instructor on the side. But like I fucking get way more out of like being there than I think the students do. You know what I mean? Because like
it's relevant to your
working
knowledge.
It keeps me fresh, and like I feel that like the caliber of people that are teaching there, like I'm just fucking better for just being in the periphery. And like, there's always like some degree of like imposter syndrome. Like you look, like in anything, you like look around and you're like, man, like all these people are like super really high caliber. Whether it's like
they're probably thinking the same thing about you.
Yeah, I don't know. They're probably like, oh, someone always has to sneak through the cracks here. So we have one. But no, I mean, it's like you said, like you should, if you're committed to anything, like whatever industry you're in, like you should always view yourself as a lifelong learner. And maybe me saying like it's a burden is like the wrong thing. Like it's a privilege to like, to me, like I always like want to learn more. Like just like, even if we were getting into a conversation about like scrap metal and like, or like whatever, business management or selling cars, like I want to, like I'm just naturally like an inquisitive person, so I like just learning new things.
Sure.
But I understand that not everyone's like that. But anyways,
I also think there's I think that there's culture clash between like EMS and non-EMS providers in the fire service, but I think that there's an extra layer of shit, I don't know what else you want to call it, if you're in a service where you also deal with a private service. So like some of these smaller towns you talk about, right? Some of them have an ambulance because that's how they fund themselves. Some of them are too small to have an ambulance. So they do run at like a BLS or first responder level, and then they deal with the like incoming private ambulance company who has a contract, and that's probably the most common way it happens, right? I guess now it's probably shifting a little bit, but very common that there's a contracted private,
probably like 50-50.
Yeah, ambulance company,
like you said, I
and
think
then
the pendulum.
Sometimes it can be you're contentious with them because again, like you have you're not necessarily motivated by the same things that like their bosses might be motivated by for doing certain interventions in patient care and things, or they think that I know that a lot of times like they're like, oh, these guys are lazy, and we're like, no, it's just like we've seen this before or whatever. So I think there's just a lot of levels of like
complexity
to the issue, and it's not a super simple fix.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was,
then you
we
just
would,
have
then it would-
personalities.
if it
Yeah.
was, I wouldn't be
Well,
wearing
yeah,
a
then
bulletproof
there's-
vest.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I just think that like it shouldn't devolve. Like I think like, and again, like we said this a lot, it's like the nexus of the show, like taking complicated issues and at least like having a conversation about them, which I'm going to talk about. We had the privilege to have some really good feedback on our group page. That was, it's like you said, it's very easy for this to devolve into just like, you're the fucking problem. No, you're the fucking problem, right? And then at the end of the day, like that doesn't benefit like the townspeople or this, the people that we ultimately serve. But we'll talk about that. But I wanted to highlight, so I have some pictures up here, like just, and I think this speaks to what you're talking about, is just like the raw diversity of different system layouts. So some of these are familiar and some of them aren't. So obviously in the top left, you have John's service, so Stoughton, which is a fire-based EMS system that operates at the ALS level. They're ALS transporting. Matt's system down in the bottom left-hand corner, which is, again, another version of a fire-based EMS system that operates at the BLS level with an ALS intercept. Up in the top right, which I thought was interesting, Pittsburgh they have a third service, but their third service is also responsible for running like their rescue. Heavy rescue, which I thought was interesting. Miami-Dade, right? So they are a fire-based EMS system. They have a very robust EMS system within their fire agency. And what's kind of fun fact about Miami-Dade, they run with 3 on their ambulances, which is interesting. Then you have in the bottom corner, you have WEMS, which is a third service that operates strictly at the ALS level, although they have a sprinkling of new BLS units. And then the next page, right? So you have some more familiar units. So you have BEMS, which is another third service in the bottom left-hand corner, which runs predominantly BLS and has ALS units. You have 2
I think they only have 3 ALS for the whole city, right?
Yeah. So the vast majority of these are within our own state, and it just shows like the raw like variability of all these systems. Or you have Cambridge, for example. So Engine 3, we used to both be on Engine 3, one ALS engines, and we also run squads, which is like similar to like LA County. We have like the Cali squads, but our squads are also like an extension of the rescue company. And then one of probably the most unique unit. So in Mattapoisett, the police run the EMS. So it's like there's this like raw like variability. There's no like one way that I think you can say like this is the way, because it's so it's so like community dependent on like what works well for your community. There always can be, any system can always be better. Like no one's refuting that. But I think it's important to get that conversation going. So I was very happy to see, like we said, we strive to keep this show like as user driven as possible. So some of these are a little long, but I intentionally plucked these out because I thought they were really good points and worth reading. So we do have obviously the JobTlks Facebook page, and we have the JobTlks group. We have the JobTlks website, but the group is very interesting because the nexus of the show, we try to keep it as user driven as possible. And there's a lot of conversations that occur in there that don't even involve us, to where members of the group just kind of pose questions in there and ask the JobTlks community their thoughts on something. One of the best conversations we have came from probably one of the most divisive topics, which is EMS and the fire service. And then someone had asked about like the opinion of having paramedics, right? So here's like a broad spectrum, and then the one at the end I thought was really powerful. That kind of gives like it gives a lot of like context over a career. So the first one was, the response was like, the question posed was essentially like EMS in the fire service, yes or no, paramedics in the fire service, yes or no. And the first person said, I've removed all the names. EMS makes the fire service, EMS makes the fire department more complicated, brings more drama, and takes the focus away from the mission. So while, this person, everyone's entitled to their opinion, this comment actually brought a lot of positive feedback, right? Of people that are saying like, hey, well, at the end of the day, like the mission is the people. And if this is what the people need, then that's the mission. But also he brings up a good point of like, hey, like we can't abandon like the fundamental like competencies that we need to be good at, which is firefighting, right? So another one, there are certainly systems that work well with 3 emergency services. However, those that don't have that kind of infrastructure benefit by keeping EMS in the fire department. Logistically, fire departments are usually centrally located and in a good position to provide emergency medical care in addition to fire, rescue, and preventative services. These are departments that stay busy with fire-related calls, but on average, people are calling 911 for EMS-related calls. EMS calls typically drive call volume. Catering to that call volume yields staffing, equipment, growth, and expenditure. It's unfortunate there is a cultural divide. Some people are often staked on the fire side and are really into the EMS side. Then there are weird people like us that want to go interior, be aggressive firefighters, but also enjoy a complex medical. I think that fire EMS system is a good system, but if it's not done appropriately or done well in every community. So thought that was a good one. Then another person, it depends on what service is being offered currently. If it's a great service with good response and work, leave it alone. But if the citizens care are struggling, then we step up and do what we do. Everything we do is for them, even the so-called petty medical calls, which I think is good. Like at the end of the day, like all this conversation has come back to we're going to do what's best for the community. So there's a smattering of other ones, and this long one at the end, it's long, but I think it's worthy of reading because it provides a lot of context, and it comes from a very respected individual, I think, within the Metro Boston area, and I think was a kind of a good way to cap it off. So he said, "My career has afforded me the unique opportunity to be involved in the evolution of our EMS system. Not as a decision maker in the macro sense. I started off as a firefighter on a BLS transporting rescue company and worked my way up to captain in what evolved into an ALS non-transporting company. I value where we have been and what we have become, and those that have become part of it, medics included. We uniquely have firefighters that are trained in suppression, tech rescue, dive rescue, hazmat, and rescue task force, many of which can supply ALS care within these incidents. The fact that we don't transport allows us to spend less time at each medical, and thus keeping those with a special training available for responses. This, I feel, is an important issue that has been often overlooked in many community plans that have moved to ALS or BLS response and transporting. Let me transition here. Many overlooking the foresight to understand the demand an EMS might have, only to increase manpower. A demand that increases each year without an end in sight. This demand, although an important part of our service, causes a restriction on the available firefighters and other responsibilities such as fire suppression. The plan to increase manpower in the fire department occurs, but now those firefighters are not available and due to being occupied for EMS system response, especially if the department has to transport patients outside the community for care. So, to end this rant, EMS has become embedded in our fire service, which I believe is a good thing. EMS plans have to be realistic, though. Leaders cannot simply start new programs without fully understanding what they entail. We need to evolve thoughtfully with the quality inclusion of different disciplines, emphasizing quality. So that was a long one, but it was from someone that I think everyone here has a great deal of respect for, and it kind of highlights, like, there's been a lot of change over the years, and I think at the end of the day, we have to place, like, what is best for our community, what is best for patients, and making sure that whatever we're doing it thoughtfully with the community in mind.
Yeah, I do like that that he highlights the adding EMS for manpower and the issues that come with that, because we talk about needing manpower for the firefighting side, and so what they do a lot of times is they're like, okay, well, we'll give you 2 and we'll start an ambulance, and the reality is that every time those 2 people are on a call, they're not available for a fire response. So I do like that. It can't be used. It can't be used as like a workaround for things, and like you said, the implementation needs to be thoughtful and make sure that we continue to provide quality.
Okay. John, anything else? Do you feel?
Yeah.
Don't leave any stones unturned.
No, yeah, I wanted to add
Shots
one more
on
thing.
fired.
Yeah. I wanted to add one more thing about that.
Fuck medics.
Yeah. That's the overall message. I wanted to add one more thing about, like, that revolving door, right? It was different for me when I worked on the 911 system in Brockton because I'm from there. So there are a lot of people who don't like to work in their own town, say, because they don't want to go to their friends' parents' houses for emergencies, things like that, or their own parents' house or what have you. But one of the things that I found when I worked there was that I enjoyed I didn't enjoy it in a sense that it was like, oh yes, I get to show up to this call that's probably going to be like devastating in one form or the other, right? But it was like one of those things when you get on scene and somebody recognizes you, right? And they know who you are, whether it's just because they've seen you around town, they've seen you at calls before, maybe they've seen you in their building, or maybe it's just because they know you from town because you grew up there. When you bring that sense of pride to work with you, it's a game changer.
Yeah,
right?
you're invested.
You're invested.
Yeah.
And so
It puts them at ease.
it does. And so having this like, closed door policy in a sense where it's like it's not easy to get into the fire service. It's just not a job that anybody can just go sign up for. The inclusion criteria is, it's pretty inclusive, I guess. I don't know. You have to have all the right things, right? So my thoughts on that are, and even though I don't live in the town that I work for, I show up there 2 to 3 days a week and work every day in the same community. And you begin to develop, obviously a deep appreciation and amount of like care for that community. And so with that like open door / closed door policy, you're getting better care from your providers because it's not some guy from the North Shore coming down here. I don't give a crap about this town, whatever, giving, shitty care to some patient because, at the end of the day, he doesn't live here. It's not his community. He doesn't care about the place.
Not that there's anything wrong with the North Shore.
Not that there's anything wrong with
No,
the North Shore. I'm
absolutely
just a
not.
South Shore guy, so I figured I'd point that out. But yeah, no. So that's like just one thing that
People
I wanted
people
to point
care
out.
about their it's pride. It's pride and ownership.
Yeah, pride and ownership, care about, care in your community and things like that. And that's not, I'm not saying that is the case when somebody comes from somewhere else, because it's certainly not always the case. But I think that when it's yours, you tend to care more about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's a fire-based EMS approach, although it can be complex and it can create some clashes. I think that it's still the best approach, and we just
agree.
have to work. We just have to work through it.
Yeah.
To whatever the solution may be.
20 years from now, it'll be some other credential that they want in the fire service, and
Oh, absolutely.
you know what I mean?
We'll just keep evolving.
Yeah.
As we should.
Yeah.
As we should.
Yeah.
So awesome. So I appreciate you guys. We appreciate all you guys. We got a lot of significant amount of user feedback on this one, which we really appreciate. So if you guys ever, the group is kind of a lively area. If there's things you guys want to talk about, feel free to talk your own will. We're involved in some of it. We're not involved in others. But this is kind of a highlight of some of the great conversations that occur in the JobTlks group. So
And
definitely
it's
check
the
it out.
JobTlks discussion group.
Group, not droop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was able to change it
Yeah,
finally.
we were finally able to change it.
And if you can't find it, find our page, which is JobTlks again, and then you can. The group is linked right there. So we kind of had the idea of having the page for all the stuff we want to put out, the videos, the whatever, and then the group for basically anybody that we talk about having just being a platform for discussion. So anybody that wants to talk about anything, they can go there.
Awesome.
There's a few hundred people in it now.
Yeah. No,
So,
we
it's growing.
like you said, like we want this endeavor to be user driven. Like it doesn't do much for the community if we just come up here and give our opinions on random topics. Like we want to find the people that are the experts in the craft. We're just the students to come on the show or offer opinions or offer insight and to really facilitate conversation. So we really appreciate you guys. So I do have one more question, per usual, which is the question of the day. So, haven't touched this one yet, but this would be, what is your favorite firehouse meal cooked for dinner?
Whatever I'm cooking.
Do you have a favorite though? When you come in and like, oh, what are you guys cooking? I'm like, cooking this. Like, yeah, that's my favorite.
So we've been doing, now not everybody cooks, right? That's another controversial subject.
Yeah, I can't
Right.
cook. I'm a good helper.
Yeah.
He can cook.
Allegedly.
He just overcooks
I
the
don't know.
meat.
And
Chris
he-
and Goody went.
He does overcook meat, so it's like you don't want to trust him on the grill, but sometimes you got to fumble through it to get there.
Yep.
Anyone can grill, right? You can always go do a mixed grill. Vegetables are easy.
I just
All right.
not anyone can grill.
Anyone can grill.
Anyone can put food on a grill.
Well, chicken's tough.
anyone can put food on a grill. Not anyone can make that food good.
You're not wrong, but if there's a place to learn and to be fostered,
It's more forgiving.
yeah, it's there.
Feed that shit to your kids.
You know.
I want the good stuff.
But for me, favorite meal in in the firehouse just because it's so good, and it's like, you know, you're never gonna get it cheaper anywhere. We do a lot of roasts, right? So we'll do like a big prime rib roast, or you know, whatever, whether it's like a shoulder or whatever it is, right? Yeah, or a top round roast or a bottom round or whatever. I'm not a butcher, but anyhow, but yeah, we do the roast. We cook them rare, Barrey. We cook them rare.
So do I.
And we and then
when I cook prime rib at the
You know
firehouse.
what?
Do you guys have a slicer?
You know what it is? I think Barry actually just doesn't know what rare is. Because he insists, and I'm just getting that. Like, are you colorblind? Are we learning something about you?
I don't want to talk about it right now on the air.
So, do you guys have a slicer?
No, like a deli slicer.
Yeah, we have a deli slicer.
Really?
Yeah.
And you have a slicer.
Where's your firehouse,
rib?
John? Where's your firehouse?
Yeah,
Under a Stop and Shop?
Wait, are you cooking
down the street from one.
like a boneless prime rib into roast beef?
Oh yeah.
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah. We cook it and then we run it, and then it's like, so then we're doing mashed potatoes and green beans. We usually have mushrooms and gravy. I mean, that's just like,
Dang.
yeah, no, that's like that. We probably do that once or twice a month. Easy.
You guys eat prime rib once or twice a month?
Bro, that is a Christmas meal
What?
in
So
our firehouse.
well, I don't know if it's prime rib roast all the time, right? But that's why I said bottom shoulder or top round or whatever.
Some
Some sort of roast,
Yeah.
and it's always delicious.
Wow.
And yeah, so it's a good meal.
That
If
is
you
a
had
good
to go to
one.
a restaurant and buy it, it'd be like a $25 plate.
Yeah.
But we're all splitting the meal. It's usually like $8 or $9 because we usually do it when it's on sale.
Yeah.
Nice.
Truth be told.
Squilliam?
I like, so we usually do, around Christmas, we'll do a prime rib. I like to cook a prime rib. I love cooking a prime rib. I'm a big fan of like spaghetti, firehouse spaghetti.
Classic.
I'm gonna give a shout out. I'm gonna use his real name to CJ.
I was just thinking the same thing.
CJ Ladder 2. I'm not a big turkey guy.
Oh, I was hoping you would say the turkey.
I'm not a big
amazing.
turkey guy.
Yeah.
I eat it once for Thanksgiving, and that's more than enough for me.
Sure.
Until he brought in, so his family's from Antigua, and he brought in this turkey that was like,
Dude, it's amazing.
seasoned. I don't know what the hell
There's
is on
Scotch
it, man.
bonnets in
But
it.
there's like spicy peppers in there,
Yeah.
and it's like this orange, like almost
It's amazing.
marinated. It sits in, and
Amazing.
he like, dude, it is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Best turkey I've ever had. Like,
Yeah,
I
hands
would-
down.
You know what
I
the
would leave
secret
my
is?
family party
Hands
to go
down.
spend time with CJ.
The secret to getting a good turkey, like to cooking a good turkey. The best turkey I ever had was also in the firehouse. And this kid, Timmy, that we work with, he's like, it's all about the preparation. I'm like, okay, like, what's the fucking preparation?
Right.
He goes, you brine it for 24 hours.
Yeah.
You put it in a brine. And whatever it does, like, you would think that it would, like, the salt would, like, suck the moisture out, but it
No, it's
does
the other
the
way around.
exact opposite.
Really?
And so
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, watch this. He pulls the turkey out. He goes to like slice the breast, and the whole thing just sloughed off.
It's the same thing as steak. Like you salt it
Oh man,
the day before,
Yeah.
and it absorbs the moisture.
it's just crazy. And so like it was the best turkey I've ever had in my life.
I will say you cook a hell of a steak. I will.
Thank you. I know.
Yeah, you do.
He didn't.
Very
He didn't
good.
grow the animal. Don't give him that much
Yeah,
credit.
no.
Listen, I don't do a lot of things well. I cook like 4 staple meals, and the reason I cook those 4 is because I
Really
can cook
good
them
at it.
well.
Yeah, no, your steak is really good.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go with a classic. It's also a shout out, and it's his birthday, even though he won't see this episode for a little while. And I'll use his real name, Robert Goodwin, Goody, affectionately known as Goody. Cooks what we have affectionately called Goody loaf, which is just his meatloaf, and it's really fucking good. And
Goody
it's-
makes good meatloaf.
Yeah, so we call it Goody loaf. Goody's he's a really fucking just a good dude. He makes great food. Kind of jury's kind of out. He's had me on the bench as far as chopping and stuff, but I've been reading the playbook. He's letting me chop more stuff. Chris
Letting
is
you
letting
in,
me
huh?
there. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's
Wow.
honestly I'd say a Goody loaf. So Goody, this is for you. It's really fucking good, and I enjoy it very much. So
Sorry, one more shout out. Simple meal, right? Tacos, Firehouse Tacos, man.
Tacos.
If it's
Tacos.
Tuesday and you're not cooking,
I literally
tacos,
came in last
what is
shift.
this?
Last shift, and Meg was working, and I was like, Meg, you want to make tacos? Because she always makes the tacos, and I didn't want to
Yeah.
make. You don't step on somebody's meal toes. But I tell her I don't step on her food toes. But so I was like, do you want to make tacos? Because I would really like some tacos.
Mm.
Yeah.
Nick, I know no Firehouse yet, but if you're
No firehouse in the future either. My
All right,
friend.
so you're,
I might visit.
You're
Someday.
walking it. So yeah,
Be
but
cool.
you're walking into a home cooked meal. What are you like? Hell yeah! What's your
So a spoon roast is the stuff they use for like for a roast beef sandwich.
Yeah.
But it's in a roast form, so that's really really good.
Prime rib?
Prime rib
That's
all
still
day.
on fire?
I'm a good
only
I'm
around
good
Christmas.
for like a tomahawk steak.
Oh, hell yeah.
I've never made one at home.
On the bone, or like a Delmonic. I used to actually be a butcher. That was my first job out of high school. I was so young when I got the job, I couldn't touch the knives, but I ended up getting the knives, and I butchered whole cows and stuff like that. It was really cool. Yeah, it was very.
I
not
butchered
like,
a couple of deer, but never a whole cow.
Yeah, same idea, idea. But yeah, you really learn a lot about like what meat is like
The prime cuts.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not what you expect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Yeah, no, but definitely like a tomahawk steak or a big hunk of meat. I'm
Dude,
good.
any giant hunk of red meat
Yeah.
is my jam.
Yep,
Excellent.
same.
Cool. Well, we thank you guys for all that you do. I'll let Will do the normal outro because I can't remember everything. Check out the website. We've been working hard on that. We had the bookshelf that's evolving. Buy some T-shirts. We'll have those up soon. And I'll turn over the rest to a trained professional for outros.
Bye. No. Thanks for watching. Barry said it all already. Hit us up on the website. Take a look at our merchandise. Help us fund this endeavor. Make sure you subscribe.
Big time. Big one.
That's a big one for
Really
us.
appreciate
And like we were talking about, go find that discussion group. If you have a question for us, for anybody else, if you just want to put something out, talk about something, like please find that. That's kind of the point of it. And hit us up on our socials, and we'll see you for episode 16.
Crazy.
Dang. All right. Without further ado, JobTlks out.
Peace.